Give me 22 minutes and you will never look at pleasure the same way again. Miyamoto Musashi. The invisible enemy, pleasure as a disguised trap. There is an enemy who doesn't wield a sword, wears no armor, and doesn't announce his attack. He arrives with a gentle touch, a pleasant scent, a lit screen. It's immediate pleasure. In Musashi's time, the enemy could be seen, heard, and felt before combat. Today, he's invisible because he dresses as a friend. But like any disguise, sooner or later, he reveals his hidden blade. They say pleasure is life's reward. However, a samurai knows that reward without effort is like a bamboo sword. It makes noise, but it doesn't cut. Swiping on the phone, opening a packet of candy, replying to a forbidden text, these seem like harmless acts, but each one trains your spirit to flee rather than confront. And on the path of the warrior, fleeing from yourself is the greatest defeat. Carl Jung warned us, many of the things we seek for comfort are the very things that prevent us from healing. Musashi would say the same thing, but with the coldness of someone who won a mortal duel. He who seeks rest before victory has already lost. Easy pleasure is just that, premature rest. It presents itself as relief, but it robs you of the discipline needed to weather the storm. The danger lies in the habit. The samurai practices cutting thousands of times until it becomes second nature. We practice distraction thousands of times until it becomes reflex. You wake up, you reach for your cell phone without knowing why. There's no urgency, no purpose, but conditioning. And the more you feed that reaction, the weaker you become in the face of silence, which is the true battlefield. I want you to imagine him as Musashi would imagine an enemy hidden in the mist. You may not see him, but with every false step, he gets closer. That enemy is pleasure used as an escape. It doesn't knock you down suddenly, it weakens you little by little. And while you smile for 3 seconds at an empty stimulus, he sharpens his sword. The question is, are you going to keep letting him train against you? Vacuum training, the hunger that pleasure does not feed. Pleasure that isn't born out of need is like salt water. The more you drink, the thirstier you get. From childhood, we're conditioned to replace pain with sweets, crying with cartoons, frustration with any distraction. This creates an invisible and dangerous reflex. The mind begins to fear stillness, like an apprentice who flees the silence of the dojo before hearing the master's command. Musashi understood that discomfort is a teacher. He trained not only the body, but the mind to endure the void between blows. We, on the other hand, fill every space with stimuli. We can't stand waiting. We can't stand being. That's why we confuse pleasure with relief and relief with victory. But a warrior knows true victory is not the end of pain, but the ability to move through it. When we seek pleasure to fill the silence, it becomes a blunt sword. You can wave it, but it doesn't cut anything. It's just a motion that wears down without transforming. Like the samurai who repeats a wrong cut 1,000 times, we reinforce patterns that weaken us. Every pursuit of quick pleasure increases the distance between us and the essence we should be cultivating. The most dangerous thing about this unconscious training is that it disguises itself as normal life. It's common, socially accepted, even applauded. Those who reject easy pleasure are seen as odd. But Musashi didn't win by being common. He won by not following the crowd. He knew that to be invincible, you have to endure what most people avoid. And that begins by recognizing where pleasure has been a master rather than a servant. The hunger you feel isn't always physical nor always emotional. Often it's spiritual. It's the call to return to your own center, to your own dojo. And as long as you continue to satisfy that hunger with distractions, you'll only feed the emptiness. It's time to change your training. It's time to use silence as a sword.
The double sword, pleasure as a tool or poison. Pleasure is not the enemy. Like the sword, it is neutral until a hand decides what to do with it. In the hands of a master, the sword protects and brings justice. In the wrong ones, it wounds and destroys. Pleasure, used with intention, is fuel for life. Used as an escape, it is poison that slowly kills clarity and discipline. Musashi said, "The same blade that saves can kill." This applies to anything that sparks pleasure. Eating with presence can nourish. Eating to escape can hinder. Conversing to connect can strengthen. Conversing only to fill the silence can distract. The key is in who wields it, not in the tool itself. The danger is that, unlike the sword, pleasure rarely warns us of risk. It doesn't glitter, it doesn't weigh in the hand, it doesn't whistle as it cuts through the air. It infiltrates, it settles, and before you realize it, you can't live without it. That's why the samurai trains their gaze, not to see more things, but to perceive before it's too late. Recognizing whether pleasure is an ally or an enemy is a vital skill. When pleasure is used to avoid yourself, it becomes a gilded prison. It's comfortable, but it's still a prison. And as long as you settle for the glitter of the bars, you'll never see the landscape beyond. Musashi would never agree to fight on a field marked by the enemy. Likewise, you must not agree to live limited by pleasures that keep you captive. The goal is not to eliminate pleasure, but to purify it, to remove its function as anesthesia and restore its function as celebration. Pleasure, like a well-sharpened sword, must be ready to be used at the right time, with the right intensity, for the right reason. Otherwise, it ceases to be an ally and becomes a silent traitor. Discipline as a path to true pleasure. Musashi didn't see discipline as punishment, but as the edge that keeps the sword sharp. In today's world, discipline is treated as deprivation, but for the warrior, it's freedom. Delaying gratification isn't a sacrifice. It's silent training to become a master of oneself. Every time you resist an impulse, you build confidence, and confidence is more powerful than any quick pleasure. Resisting the easy click, the impulsive message, the misplaced craving. It seems small, but it's like practicing a precise cut over and over again. Accumulating small internal victories makes you feel like you have the sword under control, not the other way around. This feeling is liberating because it transforms your relationship with pleasure. It stops being your master and becomes your servant. True pleasure is silent, almost invisible. It doesn't scream, it doesn't demand, it doesn't threaten. It emerges like the perfect cut, swift, precise, and inevitable. It's the consequence of one internal battle, not a shortcut. The problem is that most people prefer the spectacular blow, the one that pleases the crowd but doesn't win the fight. For Musashi, patience is as lethal as strength. The samurai who waits for the right moment defeats the impetuous one who attacks too soon. Similarly, discipline teaches that pleasure delayed is more nourishing because it has the taste of conquest. Those who understand this are not afraid to wait, they are afraid to waste strength on empty rewards. And here's the key. Discipline isn't about saying no to pleasure, but about saying yes at the right moment. It's about choosing when and how it enters your life so that each experience is complete and not just a temporary relief. Thus, pleasure stops controlling the warrior and begins to elevate him.
Facing silence, the dojo of the soul. Silence is the training ground most feared by most. However, for Musashi, it was in silence that the most important battles were won. Without noise, there is no distraction. Without distraction, the enemy within appears. That's where many give up, because looking within requires more courage than facing any armed adversary. Carl Jung warned that when we ignore the inner world, the outer world becomes deafening.
That's why we live surrounded by noise, music in the shower, constant notifications, meaningless conversations. These sounds are a shield against the encounter with our own shadow. But Musashi knew to flee from silence is to surrender the sword to the enemy before the fight. Facing silence is like training without a sword, only with your hands. You feel vulnerable. You notice every weakness. You confront every thought you tried to cover up with stimuli. It's uncomfortable, but purifying. And it's in that discomfort that the essence of true strength lies. Those who fear stillness live in a constant search for fulfillment. They are predictable, manipulable, and therefore vulnerable. A warrior who cannot bear silence exposes himself to invisible attacks because he acts out of escape, not strategy. Musashi trained so that emptiness was not a threat, but a home. When silence stops being a punishment and becomes safe ground, everything changes. You no longer seek to fill it, you begin to protect it. That's the moment the mind becomes the perfect sword, calm, precise, and always ready to act at the right moment. The inevitable confrontation, betraying yourself, is losing the war. The greatest betrayal a warrior can commit is not against his master or his clan, but against himself. Every time you choose pleasure as an escape instead of truth, you weaken your spirit. It's not a single mistake. It's a silent accumulation that erodes confidence. And without self-confidence, any victory is fragile. Musashi knew that victory begins before battle, with the certainty of not betraying oneself at the decisive moment. This certainty doesn't arise by chance. It's built through small, daily choices. When you take shortcuts, you reinforce the idea that you're incapable of resisting. It's like entering a duel believing you've already lost. This betrayal is often disguised as survival. Just a little more. I deserve it. It doesn't matter. But every concession strengthens the prison and weakens the warrior. The mind begins to rely more on the anesthesia of pleasure than on the strength of the spirit. Recognizing this betrayal isn't a cause for shame, but rather for awakening. A warrior isn't defined by past mistakes, but by the decision not to repeat them. Musashi didn't win all his duels by never failing. He won because he never allowed himself to be defeated by the same mistake twice. Admitting that you've used pleasure as an escape is the first clean break in the battle for your freedom. It's painful, but it marks the beginning of a war that, if won, changes everything. Because by regaining self-confidence, you once again become master of the sword and your destiny.
The myth broken. Freedom is not doing everything. It is not needing. The modern world sells freedom as the ability to do whatever you want, whenever you want. But Musashi knew that true freedom is not needing to do anything to feel complete. The samurai who seeks battles only to prove his worth is already defeated. The master who doesn't need to fight to confirm his strength is the one who is truly free. When you stop needing pleasure as an escape, you begin to live in balance. It's not about denying yourself the good, but about not being a slave to it. Your phone, your food, your compliments, they can all be enjoyed, but none are essential to your peace.
This independence is the invisible sword that intimidates any adversary. Many fear this state because there are no more distractions to blame. Without easy pleasure, you come face to face with what you've always avoided: your fears, your emptiness, your wounds. Musashi sought precisely this because he knew that only those who fully know themselves can win. To avoid this truth is to live under domination. When pleasure ceases to have power over you, presence takes the throne. And presence cannot be bought or stolen. It's a silent power that turns your actions into strategic choices, not impulsive reactions. It's living at the pace of your own heart, not that of the market. Breaking this myth is a turning point. You stop measuring your life by how much you consume or how many pleasures you have, and you start measuring it by how awake you are. And being awake means being impossible to manipulate, because no one can offer you something you no longer want as bait. Presence as an invincible weapon. Musashi said that emptiness was his greatest weapon because there were no weak points in it. Presence works the same way. When you're fully present, pleasure loses control, marketing loses reach, and vices lose strength. Not because the world changed, but because you stopped being a target. Presence is being whole in each moment without seeking to numb yourself. It is perceiving life as it is without adjusting it to feel safe. It's walking across the battlefield without rushing to attack, knowing that the enemy will find no opening. This calm is what makes a warrior invincible. In today's world, presence is an act of rebellion. It's rejecting noise, saying no to excess, choosing conscious silence over constant stimulation. Not to escape the world, but to master it from within. It's the state in which you see the traps before they close. Meaning, as Musashi knew, isn't comfortable. It requires effort, patience, and even pain. But unlike easy pleasure, it builds solid foundations. It's like forging a sword. The process is slow, fiery, and uncomfortable, but the result is a blade that doesn't break with the first blow. Presence is not the absence of pleasure, but the conscious choice of when and how to experience it. It is the total mastery of time and attention. And when you reach this point, nothing external can steal your peace. You become an untouchable warrior, armed not with steel, but with clarity.
The question that breaks the cycle. Every samurai has a decisive blow, the one that ends the fight in a single movement. In the realm of pleasure, that blow is a question: what do I really need now? This question cuts off impulse before it becomes action. It separates desire from need, escape from conscious choice. This question demands brutal honesty. Often, the answer won't be pleasure, but rest, connection, purpose, or simply silence. When you allow yourself to listen to that answer, you begin to rewrite your reflection. You stop attacking on impulse and start acting strategically. Musashi never entered a duel without first studying his opponent. Likewise, you shouldn't rush into pleasure without understanding what you're really seeking. Maybe it's not the chocolate, the video, or the forbidden conversation you want, but rather to feel seen, heard, and understood. Taking this pause before giving in to the impulse is like taking a breath before drawing your sword. In that brief moment, the battle is decided. You discover that you're not a slave to momentary willpower and that you can choose a deeper path, even if it requires more effort. The question isn't magic, it's practical. The more you ask it, the sharper your discernment becomes. And discernment is the true blade of a warrior, capable of cutting through illusions and leaving only what matters. With it, you build an invincible life. The final state: living without the need to flee. Living without the need to flee is like wielding a sword that doesn't need to be used to inspire respect. You still laugh, love, and enjoy life's sweet moments, but now they're chosen, not pursued. There's no longer a rush to fill in the void, nor a fear of silence. There's space to feel, not just to react. In this state, every pleasure is a conscious celebration, not an anesthetic. A hot cup of coffee in the morning, a chat with a friend, a break after work, everything is more savory because you're not using it to escape, but to live fully. Musashi would call this the effortless cut, the perfect movement that arises naturally. Relationships become cleaner because they aren't born of lack. Habits are strengthened because they aren't interrupted by impulses. And silence becomes golden, not as absence, but as total presence. Pleasure, at this point, loses its power to manipulate and becomes a loyal ally. Carl Jung spoke of individuation, becoming whole. Musashi would call it absolute mastery. It's the moment when shadow and light, silence and action, pleasure and discipline coexist without internal warfare. You no longer try to erase parts of yourself. You use each one as a weapon. That's the true treasure, not constant pleasure, but constant peace, a strength that can't be sold, bought, or taken away. In that state, you don't chase the summit because you carry the entire mountain within you.
Modern life wants you to confuse freedom with consumption and joy with stimulation. But the warrior who follows Musashi's path knows that true victory lies in self-mastery. Pleasure is not the enemy, but when used as an escape, it becomes the most dangerous golden chain. And the key to breaking it is presence. Every time you choose silence over distraction, discipline over impulse, intention over automatic, you sharpen the sword of the spirit. And a sharp sword cuts through illusions. Pleasure becomes pure again, not a coin with which you sell your peace. The next desire will come, as always, but now you'll be ready. The question, what do I really need now, will become your swift, precise, and liberating blow. And the answer many times will be presence. Not because you reject pleasure, but because you no longer need it to feel complete. The world will notice. They'll say, "You've changed, that you're calmer, less easily impressed." Some will try to understand. Others will fear that silent strength. But you will know. It's not coldness. It's freedom. It's not detachment. It's mastery. And mastery is the essence of a warrior. In the end, the only pleasure worth having is the one you don't have to chase. It doesn't chain you down. It frees you. It doesn't steal your attention. It honors it. And when you get to that point, the whole world can try to distract you, but you're no longer for sale.